Hey everyone, Zach here with GP PsychWorks. We want to do a video because we get a lot of questions about do we make custom windshields and custom parts, and the answer is definitely yes. We make custom windshields or custom acrylic parts for really any different application. Motorcycles, boats, car parts, pretty much anything you need custom made out of acrylic, especially if it needs heat forming. That would be our specialty and is something we can do. So we'll go through some steps of what you guys need to fill out and do in order for us to be able to make the parts that you're looking for. The first step is filling out this custom intake form, which really helps organize and keep all the information straight. As you can see, we get a lot of parts in here. These are things that just came in the past week. So filling out this form, like I said, helps us keep the information straight and also helps just document the process and get the ball rolling. So we have a video on filling out that form if you need some specifics on that. So after you fill out the form, the next step would be paying the custom deposit fee, which you can do online, or you can either call us and we can take some information over the phone. This gets the ball rolling on our side, especially once we have your information. And if you're sending us a package with some template or an original, then we can send you a shipping label out of that deposit. That deposit does get applied to the final bill where everything's reconciled. After you pay the custom deposit fee, the next step would be actually sending us your physical template or an original, or giving us dimensions, a digital template. Even if it's just a napkin drawing with some dimensions on it, we can make things from that if the part lends itself to it and it doesn't have too many complex features. So after you've paid the custom fee, we will send you that label. You pretty much just have to tell us the package dimensions, width, length, height, and the weight, and then we will send you a label, and then we'll get the part in. Once we receive the part, we'll look it over, compare it to the intake form where it's got your notes on what you're looking for, and we will call you with a final quote on the project. A lot of the questions that people have, I guess the first question that people have is, can you make it? Which we can tell from that intake form pretty quickly if it's doable. The next question is, how long does it take and how much money does it cost? So we've got a few examples here that we will walk through as far as the cost. As for the timeline, most of the custom projects take 3 to 4 weeks to make because we go through a lot of steps and we try to batch them together as much as possible. If you have some really unique parts you need made, those could take longer just depending on the specifications. So now we'll walk through some of the specific things that customers send in, and if you need to send it in or if it's something you can do from dimensions. So the first one we've got here is a pretty old touring windshield. This is definitely one that you would have to send in to us in order for us to replicate. It's got, pretty complex features and bends. It's heat formed, and it's also got, some parts here, and it's pretty difficult to identify from pictures. We can identify a lot of stuff from pictures if you send it in with that intake form. But sometimes it's just necessary to have to send an original so that we can replicate it because it's difficult to identify. So an example for that part would be pretty much our minimum $219. Depending on the final size and the thickness of it, it could be up to like $300, kind of just depends. The next style of windshields that we make custom all the time are our bubble style windshields. So these are more vintage road racer, just vintage bikes in general. There's a lot of these bikes floating around that have older fairings that are indistinguishable. So we've got two examples here. This would be an example that you would need to send in to us. It's, we can kind of get close. It's some kind of Avon style windshield, Rickman style windshield with the like pretty drastic rise over the headlight. The other thing that you can note obviously is that we can make the parts even if your windshield's totally destroyed and in multiple pieces. So we'll finish taping that together and match it up to a pattern and get that made up. So that would be an example that you would need to send in. A lot of the times people have bubble windshields that you really do not have to send in to us. So the main factor is the bottom profile of it. So if you set this one on a table, it's totally flat. So we call these flat bottom bubbles. And we'll talk through a little later about how to measure and what we need in order for us to make these. But this is an example of a windshield with a 38-inch circumference, and we just matched this headlight or helmet cutout to match some pictures that the customer had sent in. So that's an example of one that you don't have to, that we could really work from a digital template. That pretty much covers most of the motorcycle windshields that are custom. There are kind of some oddball custom things, which is for like a just totally prototyping part. So this would be a small manufacturer who really has a custom fairing, and most of it's digital designed. So they have a digital step file of the part they need, and they actually 3D printed this part and sent it to us in order for us to replicate it. The important thing to note here is that we can't always get it exactly how the digital files are. So really in most of the cases we'll get it as close as we can, but in these specifics sometimes it's hard to replicate exact flanges and curves like that. In this case he sent this to us. He still wants this modified a little longer and a little like wider at the bottom. So this would be another example of something that you could send in to us and we could make for you. I guess on that note, concerning the cost, there are custom fees associated with a lot of these custom projects. Some of them we don't need to make new molds or new tooling, such as the bubbles. Those, there's not a custom fee associated with it because it's really pretty easy work just to make one-off. We're already doing something and it kind of lends itself to that. A project like this would incur a custom fee or minimum quantities ordered, just depending on how unique it is. That would also apply to the bigger one, which we'll talk later too. So the next big group of windshields that we make are custom boat windshields. So this is one that a customer sent us an original one, and we replicated it. I don't think we really changed anything on this one. It just pretty much had UV crazing everywhere, and he just wanted a custom copy of it. So that would be one that did require a custom fee, and we were able to replicate it. You can still choose your color and tint. Pretty much on all of these you can do that. If you don't have an original one but have a boat windshield that you need made, we'll walk you through the measurements a little bit later on that one. Okay, this windshield here would be an example of one that you do need to send to us, and one that would definitely incur a custom fee and minimum order quantity, and also take a little longer than our 3 to 4 weeks. As you can see, it's really like a large bubble style windshield, and made out of styrofoam that's painted. And he pretty much made this prototype template for us to replicate and try to get as close as possible. There's also some specific requirements on a mounting flange at the bottom, and this one really requires custom tooling. So even though it's a bubble style windshield, it's a lot more work than our normal race bubble windshields. So that was a general overview of the different kinds of custom parts we can make. Now we'll dig into a little more specifics about the measurements So we'll start with the bubble here, and the main measurement that we need on these flat bottom bubbles that you can just measure at home and send to us as a digital template would be the circumference. So this would be as if the windshield's sitting on a table, and you can use seamstress tape, you know, a soft tape, or even just a string, and then measure it out after you straighten it out. But the main measurement we need is from one wingtip around to the other side. So we'll start at one edge back here and then go around the windshield to the other side. Let's get this over here. And you can see it comes out to 38 inches like this. It doesn't have to be super tight, but we're pretty much measuring this circumference measurement. So from one wingtip around the front to the other wingtip is the main measurement. So you can see we even have this one as a 38-inch clear bubble. And then the back helmet cutout we can do based off pictures. It's not going to be exact, but it's going to be pretty close. So that would be an example of one that you would not have to send in to us. So the next example of one that you don't technically have to send in to us would be these custom boat windshields that are strip heat, pretty much sharp corners on the sides and flat. So they're not fully heat formed, they're pretty much strip heated just there. And the main measurements that you would take on this one would be our inside dimensions, our ID, which you can measure on the console. So we've got kind of this handy mat here that we use for this. So you'll see you pretty much put it at 0 on one side and then make the front straight across, and you can see that this comes out to about 23. I believe it was actually like 22 and 22 3/4 or something, but there's a little bit of flex in the material, so it's pretty easy to get to 22 3/4. So you would get that ID dimension, and then we'd also get the depth of the windshield. So you can see this one's a little bit over 8 inches. It's about 8 1/4 inch deep. And then the last measurement would be the height of the windshield, which is 16.5 inches tall. So most of the windshields, boat windshields, we can make from that. There are kind of specifics which we can get into further, like there's ID at the bottom front, ID at the bottom back, and then also inside dimensions at the top. So as you can see, this specific windshield tapers in a little bit, so it's got a little bit different dimensions at the top. So that is something that if you don't have a windshield, you could kind of give us those dimensions, we could make it. Or if you have a windshield but you don't want to ship it to us, we could also do it from that. So those are some examples of the different kinds of custom parts we make. We really get lots of different stuff in here. We get hardware mounted windshields where we transfer the hardware, and smaller parts, flat parts, anything that needs to be CNC cut, laser engraved, nice finished acrylic is definitely something we can do. So fill out that intake form and we'll get started on the process, and then we'll get some payment going, and we can get your custom project brought to life.